Have you ever walked past a cornfield at night and felt like something was watching you? People say the stalks whisper, that shadows move between the rows, that some scarecrows blink. Tonight, you'll hear 12 disturbing cornfield horror stories, eerie encounters, strange lights, and footsteps that shouldn't be there. If you've ever had a chilling moment near a field or farm, drop it in the comments. Your story might be next. Now relax and let the stories begin. Story 1. The Cornfield Horror. My name is Amy, and I'm about to tell you something I've never told anyone. Not because I didn't want to, but because I'm terrified of what it means. It's been 2 months since that night in the cornfield, and I still wake up screaming, the sound of Sarah's voice echoing in my head. I don't know if I'll ever escape it, but I need to get this out, to make sense of it, even if it's just for myself. So, here's what happened. It started with Sarah. She wasn't just my classmate, she was my tormentor. Every day at school, her sharp tongue found me, mocking my clothes, my quiet voice, the way I walked. She'd trip me in the hallway, her friends snickering behind her, or whisper cruel nicknames when the teacher wasn't looking. I took it, day after day, because what else could I do? I was 16, small for my age, and Sarah was everything I wasn't. Bold, popular, untouchable. But that day in detention, something in me snapped. I had enough. We were the only two in the classroom that afternoon, stuck there for an hour because of some stupid argument in the cafeteria. Sarah sat 2 rows over, smirking at me, doodling in her notebook like she didn't have a care in the world. I stared at the clock, my anger simmering. That's when the idea hit me. I didn't want to just get back at her. I wanted her to feel the fear she'd made me feel. I wanted her to know what it was like to be powerless. The walk home was our only chance. We both lived on the same side of town, and the shortest route cut past an old cornfield just outside the school grounds. It was late October, the corn tall and dry, the stalks brittle under the fading sun. Most kids avoided that field. There were stories, whispers about strange noises, shadows moving when no one was there. I never believed them, but I knew Sarah did. She'd mentioned it once, laughing nervously with her friends about how creepy it was at night. That was my weapon. As we left detention, I lagged behind, letting her walk ahead. The sky was turning purple, the air cool and heavy. I called out to her, my voice casual. "Hey Sarah, you ever been in the cornfield at dusk? I heard it's weird out there." She turned, her ponytail swinging, her eyes narrowing. "What, you trying to scare me, loser?" But there was a flicker of unease in her voice. I shrugged, playing it cool. "Nah, just saying. I thought I saw something moving in there earlier. Probably nothing." I started walking toward the field, not looking back. I knew she'd follow. Sarah couldn't resist a challenge, especially if it meant proving she was braver than me. Sure enough, her sneakers crunched on the gravel behind me. "You're so full of it," she said, but her steps quickened to keep up. I strolled boldly up to the edge of the field, the corn looming over us like a wall. The stalks swayed slightly, though there was no wind. I pointed into the shadows. "There, you see that?" She squinted, stepping closer. "What? I don't see anything." I didn't either, but I kept my voice low, urgent. "Something's moving. Come on, let's check it out." Before she could argue, I pushed through the first row of corn, the dry leaves scratching against my jacket. Sarah hesitated, then followed, muttering under her breath. The field swallowed us. The stalks closed in, taller than I'd expected, blocking out the last of the daylight. It was like stepping into another world, cut off from everything else. The air felt thicker, the sounds muffled, our footsteps, the rustle of corn, my own breathing. Sarah's bravado faded fast. "This is stupid," she said, her voice tight. "Let's go back." I ignored her, moving deeper, my plan taking shape. I'd scare her, just a little. Make her jump, make her run. I crouched low, slipping between the stalks, and picked up a clod of dirt. I tossed it a few feet away, letting it thud against the ground. Sarah froze. "What was that?" I didn't answer. I crept to the side, my heart racing with a mix of excitement and nerves. Then I jumped out, screaming as loud as I could, my arms flailing. Boo! But Sarah wasn't there. I stopped, my scream dying in my throat. The spot where she'd been standing was empty. Just corn, stretching endlessly around me. My stomach twisted. Sarah? I called, my voice small. No answer, just the faint rustle of the stalks. Then I heard it. A scream, sharp and blood-curdling, ripping through the field. It was Sarah. I knew it instantly. My legs moved before my brain caught up, sprinting toward the sound. The corn whipped against my face, tearing at my skin, but I didn't care. Sarah, I shouted, my voice cracking. The scream had come from deeper in the field, but now there was nothing, just silence, heavy and wrong. I stopped, panting, my heart hammering so hard it hurt. The corn seemed to press closer, the shadows darker. I turned in a circle, trying to get my bearings, but every direction looked the same. That's when I heard it, a laugh. High-pitched, jagged, like nails on glass. Glinting object, a blade, maybe, or another tool. He didn't move, didn't speak, just stood there watching. I turned and sprinted, the corns following me again. The footsteps returned, faster now, crashing through the stalks. I could hear him breathing, a low, rasping sound, getting closer. My legs screamed, but I pushed harder, weaving through the rows, praying for a way out. The field seemed endless, the paths twisting, doubling back on themselves. I tripped again, landing on my knees, and saw something in the dirt, a scrap of fabric, torn and bloodied. It looked like the jacket from the clearing. The man was close now, his shadow looming through the corn. I scrambled to my feet, my hands fumbling in the dirt, and found a rock. I gripped it tightly, my only weapon. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment I thought I'd lost him. Then a hand shot out from the stalks, grabbing my wrist. I screamed, swinging the rock blindly, and felt it connect with something solid. The grip loosened, and I tore free, running without looking back. I don't know how long I ran. The corn seemed to go on forever, a labyrinth with no exit. My lungs burned, my vision blurred, but I kept moving. Finally, I saw a break in the stalks, the faint glow of a streetlight in the distance. I burst onto the main road, collapsing onto the asphalt, my hands scraped and bleeding. A car swerved to avoid me, its driver shouting, but I didn't care. I was out. I flagged down a passing truck, a farmer heading home. He drove me to the police station, where I spilled everything. The screwdriver, the truck, the pile of objects, the man. The officers exchanged looks, their faces grim. They knew the field I was talking about. They'd searched it before, years ago, after another girl went missing. They took me seriously, thank God, and sent a team out that night. What they found chilled me to the bone. The truck was gone, but they recovered the pile of objects, personal items, some recent, some old, all belonging to missing people from the area. The tire tracks led to a nearby farm, abandoned for years, where they found a hidden cellar. Inside were more tools, more clothes, and a notebook filled with names, dates, and maps of cornfields. My name was in it, circled in red, with the date of that night. The man I saw was never found. They searched every field, every barn, but he'd vanished, like a ghost swallowed by the corn. The police think he's still out there, moving from town to town, hiding in the endless rows. They told me I was lucky, that I got away. But I don't feel lucky. I don't walk at dusk anymore. I don't go near cornfields. Every rustle, every shadow, feels like him, waiting, watching. The stalks still whisper my name, and I know, deep down, he's not done with me yet. Story 2. Cornfield Shadows. My name is Emily, and I never thought a simple evening walk could turn into a nightmare. I lived in a small Ohio town, the kind where everyone knows your name and the cornfields stretch endlessly under the summer sky. My house sat at the edge of town, where the asphalt gave way to dirt roads and towering stalks. I loved walking those paths at dusk, when the air cooled and the world felt quiet. But one night in July, that peace shattered, and the cornfields became something else entirely, a maze of terror that still haunts me. It was a warm evening, the kind where the heat lingers, but the breeze carries a hint of relief. I slipped on my sneakers, grabbed my phone, and headed out. The dirt road by my house ran alongside a massive cornfield, its stalks swaying gently, each one taller than me. The sun was dipping low, painting the sky orange, and the shadows stretched long across the ground. I'd walked this route 100 times, so I didn't think twice about cutting through a narrow path between the rows to save time. The corn closed around me, the stalks brushing my arms, their dry rustle the only sound. About 10 minutes in, I noticed something off. The air felt heavier, like it was pressing down on me. The rustling of the corn stopped, replaced by an eerie stillness. I paused, glancing around. The path behind me looked the same as the one ahead, endless green walls under a fading sky. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from my mom. "Where are you?" Getting dark. I typed a quick reply, but when I hit send, the signal bars vanished. No service. Odd, but not unheard of out here. I kept walking, figuring I'd hit the main road soon. That's when I heard it, a low, deliberate crunch, like footsteps on dry leaves. I froze, my heart kicking up a notch. The sound came from somewhere to my left, deep in the corn. I strained to listen, but the silence returned, thick and suffocating. "Hello," I called, my voice shaky. No answer. Probably an animal, I told myself. A deer, maybe. But the hairs on my neck stood up, and my gut screamed that I wasn't alone. I picked up my pace, the corn scraping my skin as I pushed through. The path seemed narrower now, the stalks crowding closer. Then I saw it, a glint of metal in the dirt, half buried under a broken stalk. I crouched down, my fingers brushing against a rusted screwdriver. Its handle was smeared with something dark and sticky. My stomach twisted. I stood quickly, scanning the rows, but saw nothing but green. The footsteps crunched again, closer this time, maybe 20 feet away. I dropped the screwdriver and ran. The corn seemed to fight me, stalks snagging my clothes, roots tripping my feet. My breath came in sharp gasps, and my phone slipped from my hand, lost somewhere in the dirt. I didn't stop to look for it. The footsteps were louder now, matching my pace, coming from multiple directions. Left, then right, then behind me. Whoever, or whatever, was out there was circling me, herding me deeper into the field. I burst into a small clearing, a patch where the corn had been flattened, like something heavy had been dragged through. In the center was a pile of objects: a torn jacket, a single shoe, a cracked pair of glasses. My blood ran cold. These weren't random. They felt like trophies, left by someone who wanted them found. The footsteps stopped, but the silence was worse. I could feel eyes on me, watching from the shadows of the stalks. I bolted again, my legs burning, my mind racing. The field felt alive, the corn shifting as if it were guiding me somewhere. I stumbled over a root and fell hard, my hands sinking into the dirt. That's when I saw the tracks, tire marks, fresh and deep, cutting through the clearing. They led to a narrow trail, barely visible in the darkening light. I followed them, desperate for any sign of escape, but they ended abruptly at a rusted pickup truck parked in the middle of the field. Its bed was covered with a tarp, and something about it made my skin crawl. I approached slowly, my heart pounding in my ears. The tarp was stained, dark patches spreading across it. I reached out, my hand trembling, and pulled it back. Underneath was a pile of tools, hammers, wrenches, a crowbar, all crusted with the same dark, sticky substance I'd seen on the screwdriver. And then I saw the helmet, a motorcycle helmet, dented and scratched, lying in the dirt beside the truck. My breath caught. I'd read about a case years ago, a girl who vanished in a cornfield not far from here. They found a helmet like this, linked to her killer. Before I could process it, a shadow moved behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. The corn rustled violently, but there was no wind. I backed away from the truck, my eyes darting between the rows. Then I saw him, a figure standing at the edge of the clearing, half hidden by the stalks. He was tall, wearing a dark jacket, his face obscured by the growing darkness. In his hand was a long, it wasn't Sarah, it wasn't human. The hair on the back of my neck stood on end, every muscle in my body tensing. It was close, too close. "Who's there?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. The laugh came again, sharper, moving through the stalks like it was circling me. I bolted, crashing through the corn, not caring about the noise or the cuts on my arms. I just needed to get out. The field seemed endless, the stalks grabbing at me, slowing me down. My breath came in gasps, my chest burning. Finally, I burst onto the road, stumbling onto the gravel. The cornfield loomed behind me, silent now, but I could still feel it watching. I ran all the way home, my shoes pounding the pavement, my mind screaming. When I got to my room, I locked the door and hid under my blankets, trembling. I didn't sleep that night. Every creak of the house, every whisper of the wind, sounded like that laugh. The next day, Sarah didn't show up at school. I told myself she was fine, probably just skipping. But by the third day, people started talking. Her friends were worried, her parents frantic. The police searched the town, but I didn't say anything. How could I? What would I say? That I'd lured her into the cornfield to scare her, and then, what? She'd vanished. Weeks passed, and the whispers grew darker. Kids at school started saying the cornfield was cursed, that something lived in there. I tried to ignore them, but every night I'd lie awake, replaying that scream, that laugh. I started hearing things, scratches at my window, footsteps in the hallway when I was home alone. Once I woke up to find my bedroom door wide open, though I'd locked it before bed. 2 months later, they found her. The police had been combing the area for weeks, and someone finally thought to check the cornfield again. In a shallow ditch, hidden under a pile of stalks, they found a body. It was Sarah, or what was left of her. The news didn't give details, but the rumors did. They said her body was torn apart, like something had ripped into her. They said she'd been tied up, her wrists bound with something that looked like braided corn husks. The timing matched. It had to be her. I didn't go to school for a week after that. I couldn't face anyone, couldn't bear the way they'd look at me. I hadn't told anyone what happened, but the guilt was eating me alive. I'd wanted to scare her, not whatever this was. But what was it? That laugh, it wasn't Sarah. Something else was in that field with us. Something that had watched, waited, and then I went back to the cornfield once, a few weeks after they found her. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I'd find answers, or maybe I just needed to face it. It was daytime, the sun high, but the field still felt wrong. The stalks were still standing, though they should have been harvested by now. I stood at the edge, staring into the shadows, and I swear I heard it again. That laugh, faint and sharp, coming from deep within. I haven't gone back since. I don't think I ever will. But sometimes when I'm alone, I feel it. That presence. It's not just in the cornfield anymore. It's in the creak of the floorboards, the flicker of the lights, the chill that runs down my spine for no reason. I don't know what it was, or what it wanted, but I know one thing for sure. It's still out there. And it knows my name, Story 3, The Oakland Creature. My name is Dale Jones, and I've lived on this farm outside Oakland, Nebraska, my whole life. It's a quiet place, rows of corn stretching to the horizon, the kind of land that hums with cicadas in summer and whispers with wind in winter. Nothing much happens here, not usually. But in July 1974, something changed. Something I still can't explain, no matter how many years pass. This is my story, and I swear every word is true. It started on a sweltering night, July 4th, when the air was so thick you could feel it pressing against your skin. My wife, Linda, and I were asleep in our farmhouse, the windows cracked to let in any breeze that might wander through. Around 2 a.m., a scream tore through the silence. a sound so raw and unnatural it yanked us both upright in bed. It wasn't human, wasn't animal, not anything we'd ever heard. It was like the night itself was shrieking, a jagged wail that clawed at your nerves. Our German shepherd, Shep, was barking his head off on the porch, frantic in a way I'd never heard before. I grabbed my flashlight, my heart hammering, and told Linda to stay put. Probably just a pig caught in the pen, I said, trying to convince myself more than her. I stepped outside, the beam of light cutting through the dark, but the pig pen was quiet, the animals undisturbed. That's when I heard it again, a scream, closer this time, from somewhere near the corn cribs at the edge of the cornfield. It wasn't just loud, it was wrong, like it came from something that didn't belong in this world. I froze, my breath catching, and swung the flashlight around. Nothing, just shadows swaying in the corn. Linda called from the porch, her voice tight. "Dale, come back." But then she gasped, and I turned to see her staring past me, her eyes wide. "There," she whispered, pointing toward the corn cribs. I followed her gaze, and that's when I saw it, a silhouette, tall and lanky, standing just beyond the beam of my flashlight. It was no animal I knew. It stood on two legs, its outline sharp against the moonlit corn, and then it moved. Not like a deer or a coyote, but fast, deliberate, sprinting toward the cornfield. The stalks swallowed it whole, rustling as it vanished. We didn't sleep that night. We lay in bed, listening to every creak of the house, every rustle outside. Shep stayed close, growling low at nothing we could see. By morning, we were exhausted, but too shaken to rest. I checked the corn cribs, the pen, the field, nothing. No tracks, no signs, just dry, cracked earth from the drought. But I knew what we'd seen, and so did Linda. We didn't talk about it much, not wanting to sound crazy, but word got out anyway. Small towns like Oakland, population 1,300, don't keep secrets long. The next night, it happened again. Another scream, this time from deeper in the cornfield. Shep went wild, lunging at the door like he wanted to tear something apart. I grabbed my baseball bat this time, not trusting the flashlight alone, and stepped out. The air felt heavier, like it was watching me. I scanned the field, the bat slick in my sweaty hands, and saw nothing but corn swaying under the stars. Then, a snap, twigs breaking, maybe, or something heavier. It came from the direction of the old oak tree at the edge of our property, a gnarled thing we used as a landmark. I didn't go closer. I couldn't. Whatever was out there felt like it was waiting, and I wasn't ready to meet it. By the third night, the town was buzzing. Our neighbor, Tom Wickstrom, stopped by with his son, Nick, a lanky 13-year-old who delivered newspapers. Nick was pale, his eyes darting as he told us what he'd seen that morning on his route. It was running along the gravel road, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. Big, like taller than Dad. It was on all fours, but weird, like it was using its front knuckles. No tail, nothing like a dog or a cow. I don't know what it was. Tom nodded, his jaw tight. He'd seen it too, along with his other son. They'd been driving, the dawn barely breaking, when they spotted it loping alongside the road, its movements jerky and unnatural. It didn't look right, Tom said, like it was put together wrong. That's when the stories started piling up. Old Mrs. Kemmerer, who lived closer to town, swore she saw something lurking near her barn, tall and hairy with a face like a monkey's, but a body like a bear's. Kids at the general store whispered about a figure they'd seen near the cemetery, walking upright along the tree line until they threw firecrackers at it, and it bolted into the woods. Everyone had a different description, but they all agreed on one thing. It was big, over 6 feet, and it moved like nothing native to Nebraska. Theories flew: escaped zoo animal, a roe bear, even Bigfoot. I didn't buy the Bigfoot talk, but I couldn't explain what Linda and I had seen either. The fourth night, I couldn't take it anymore. I called up Tom and a few others, Leonard Kanarski, an Oakland cop, and a couple of farmers with shotguns. We decided to search the cornfield. The drought had hardened the ground, so tracks were unlikely, but we had to try. Armed with flashlights and weapons, we spread out, moving through the rows of corn. The stalks towered over us, their dry leaves hissing like whispers. Every snap of a twig, every rustle, made my heart jump. Leonard said he'd spent nights in the city park looking for it, but found nothing. "Whatever it is, it's smart," he muttered. "It knows how to hide." We found nothing that night, but the fear didn't let up. The fifth night, I woke to Shep growling, low and steady, his eyes fixed on the window. Linda was already up, clutching a kitchen knife, staring outside. "It's out there," she whispered. I followed her gaze and saw it again. The silhouette, closer this time, maybe 100 feet from the house. It wasn't running now. It was standing, swaying slightly, like it was studying us. Its eyes caught the moonlight, glinting like coins. I don't know how long we stood there frozen, but then Shep lunged at the window, barking, and the thing took off, vanishing into the corn again. The town was on edge now. 3 TV crews from Omaha showed up, their cameras rolling as they interviewed anyone who'd talk. The World Herald ran a story, calling it the Oakland creature, and suddenly our quiet little town was a spectacle. Hunting parties formed, mostly young guys with more bravado than sense, combing the fields and woods. They came back empty-handed every time. The drought didn't help. Leonard said it was impossible to find tracks in the hard ground, but the stories kept coming. A farmer down the road swore he saw it near his cattle, which were acting spooked, refusing to graze. Another guy claimed it crossed Highway 77, moving so fast it was a blur. By the 6th night, I was barely sleeping. Every sound outside was the creature, every shadow a threat. Linda and I started locking the doors, something we'd never done before. Shep stayed inside now, his hackles up half the time. That night, the scream came again, but it was different. Closer, angrier, like it was right outside the house. I grabbed the bat and stepped onto the porch, Linda behind me with the flashlight. The beam swept across the yard, catching the edge of the corn cribs. There it was again, that silhouette, but this time it wasn't alone. Another shape, smaller but just as wrong, stood beside it. 2 pairs of eyes glinted back at us, unblinking. I don't know what made me do it, but I shouted, "Get out of here," and swung the bat at nothing but air. The shapes bolted, the corn swallowing them like it always did. The 7th night, I didn't wait for the scream. I sat on the porch with the bat across my knees, Shep at my side, his ears pricked. The air was still, the kind of quiet that feels like it's holding its breath. Around midnight, I heard it, not a scream, but footsteps, heavy and deliberate, coming from the oak tree. I stood, gripping the bat, and shone the flashlight. The beam caught something, fur, maybe, or hair, matted and dark, moving through the corn. It wasn't running this time. It was walking, slow and steady, like it wanted me to see it. Shep whimpered, tucking his tail, and I felt my knees go weak. I didn't chase it. I couldn't. I went inside, locked the door, and sat up until dawn. The sightings slowed after that. By August, the screams stopped, and the cornfield went quiet. The TV crews left, the hunting parties gave up, and Oakland tried to move on. But Linda and I never forgot. Neither did Nick, who still talks about that thing on the road, or Mrs. Kemmerer, who keeps a metal statue in her yard that looks suspiciously like the creature. To this day, no one knows what it was. A bear? A mountain lion? Something else? The drought hid any tracks, and the corn hid the truth. All I know is what I saw, what I heard, and what I felt, pure, bone-deep fear. Whatever it was real, and it was in our fields. Sometimes, when the wind moves through the corn at night, I still hear it, faint but unmistakable, a scream that doesn't belong. Story 4. The Cornfield Whispers. I was 12 when the cornfield took my friends. That summer, the air in our small town was thick with heat, the kind that made your skin stick to your clothes and your breath catch in your throat. The cornfield at the edge of Mr. Beasley's farm was our sanctuary. Ben, Corbin, Dorian, and I would race our bikes down the dirt road every afternoon, tires kicking up clouds of dust, the tall stalks beckoning us like a maze of secrets. We'd play hide and seek or tag, slipping between the rows, the leaves brushing our arms like whispers. The field was alive in its own way, rustling, swaying, hiding us from the world. One afternoon, Dorian came back different. We were sprawled in the shade of an oak tree, catching our breath after a game, when he burst through the corn, his eyes wide and gleaming. "I found something," he said, voice sharp with excitement. "A bone, sticking right out of the ground in a clearing." He described a flattened patch deep in the field, the soil bare and cracked, a single pale bone jutting up like a finger pointing to the sky. Ben laughed, saying it was probably a cow bone, but Corbin wanted to see it. I felt a prickle of unease, like a cold finger on my spine, but I didn't say anything. We agreed to meet that night, after our parents were asleep, to play hide and seek in the dark. It sounded thrilling, dangerous even, and at 12, danger was a magnet. Midnight came, and we gathered at the edge of the field, flashlights in hand. The corn loomed taller in the dark, the stalks swallowing the moonlight. My stomach churned as we stepped inside, the air cooler, heavier, like the field was holding its breath. Dorian led the way, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. "This way," he said, too eager, too sure. I lagged behind, my light flickering over the stalks, half expecting something to stare back. The others laughed, their voices echoing, but the sound felt wrong, like it didn't belong here. We reached the clearing, a perfect circle of bare earth, maybe 20 feet wide, the corn pressed back like it was afraid to grow there. The bone was there, just as Dorian said, pale and smooth, half buried in the dirt. It didn't look like a cow bone. Too long, too thin, with an odd curve. Corbin crouched to touch it, but I grabbed his arm. "Don't," I whispered. He shook me off, laughing, but his eyes darted to the shadows. Dorian was already pacing the clearing, grinning. "Let's play," he said. "Hide and seek. Right here." I wanted to leave. The air felt thick, like it was pressing against my skin, but Ben and Corbin were already nodding, caught in Dorian's excitement. "Fine," I said, my voice barely above a whisper. "But let's make it quick." Dorian counted, his voice sharp and strange, like he was mimicking someone else. 1, 2, 3. We scattered, flashlights off, the darkness swallowing us whole. I crouched behind a thick cluster of stalks, my heart pounding. The field was silent except for the faint rustle of leaves, but it wasn't the wind, it was something else, something moving. I clutched my flashlight, too scared to turn it on. Then I heard it, Dorian's voice, but not his. "Hide and seek. Everybody hide." It was too loud, too wrong, like it came from everywhere at once. My skin crawled, and I pressed myself deeper into the corn. Minutes passed, or maybe seconds. Time felt slippery. Then I heard Ben giggle, a high, unnatural sound that made my blood freeze. I flicked on my flashlight, sweeping the beam through the stalks. Nothing, just corn and shadows. Then a rustle behind me. I spun around, and there was Ben, standing inches away, his face wrong. Blood dripped from his forehead, his eyes too wide, his mouth stretched into a grin that showed too many teeth. "Found you," he whispered, his voice not his own. I stumbled back, my flashlight shaking. "Ben, what?" But he just giggled again, the sound bubbling up like something was caught in his throat. I turned and ran, the corn tearing at my arms, my legs burning. I didn't know where I was going, just away from that face. The field seemed to twist around me, the rows bending, closing in. Then I tripped, falling hard into another clearing. The sight stopped my heart. 3 bodies lay in a heap, their limbs tangled, their faces frozen in screams. Corbin, Dorian, Ben, torn apart, their insides spilling onto the dirt, blood soaking the ground, splattered on the corn. I gagged, my vision blurring, But then I saw him. Another Ben, crouched in the center, his hands buried in Corbin's leg, tearing at it with his teeth. He was giggling, his face smeared with blood, his eyes glowing in the flashlight's beam. "You found me," he hissed, his head twisting at an impossible angle, his smile too wide, too red. I screamed, scrambling backward, the corn catching at my clothes like hands. The thing that wasn't Ben stood, its movements jerky, like a puppet on strings. "Come back," it called, its voice a mockery of Ben's. "Share in my meal." The other voices joined in, Corbin, Dorian, all wrong, all laughing, coming from the darkness around me. I ran, the stalks whipping my face, my lungs burning. The field felt alive, malicious, guiding me deeper instead of out. I don't know how long I ran. My flashlight died, leaving me in pitch black, the voices fading but never gone. Finally, I burst onto the road, my bike still there, glinting in the faint moonlight. I pedaled home, my legs shaking, my mind screaming. Dawn was breaking when I stumbled into my house, collapsing on the kitchen floor. My mom found me there, shaking, unable to speak. I tried to tell her, but the words came out wrong, jumbled, like the field had stolen my voice. The police came later that morning. They found the clearing, the bodies, what was left of them. Corbin, Dorian, Ben, and Mr. Beasley, the old farmer who owned the land. All torn apart, the ground soaked with blood. The officer's face was pale when he spoke to my mom, their whispers sharp and urgent. They didn't believe my story, not at first. A 12-year-old raving about monsters in the corn. But the tests came back, saliva, fingerprints, things that didn't make sense. They matched them to some old case, someone long dead, someone who'd done things like this before. They never told the town the truth. They said it was an accident, a tragedy, but I saw my mom's face. She knew I wasn't lying. I never went back to the cornfield. We moved a year later, but the nightmares followed. Those eyes in the dark, that smile, those voices calling me back. Sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I hear them still, whispering through the stalks, waiting for me to play again. Story 5. The Midnight Corn. My name is Alex, and I was 14 when the world I knew shattered in a cornfield under a moonless Oklahoma sky. It was late, probably past midnight, and I was dozing in the backseat of our old pickup truck. The hum of the engine and the rhythmic thump of tires on the highway had lulled me into a restless sleep. My little sister, Emma, was curled up next to me, her stuffed rabbit clutched tight. Dad was at the wheel, his silhouette barely visible against the faint glow of the dashboard. The road stretched on forever, a lonely strip of asphalt cutting through endless fields. I didn't know where we were going. Dad just said we needed to move, to start fresh somewhere new. I didn't ask questions. I was too tired. The crash came like a thunderclap. One moment, I was drifting in a haze of dreams. The next, the world exploded. Metal screamed, glass shattered, and the truck lurched violently. My body slammed against the door, pain shooting through my arm like fire. I gasped, my vision swimming, and then I heard Emma scream. A sound that cut through me like a blade. The truck had stopped, tilted at a sickening angle, surrounded by broken corn stalks that scratched at the windows like skeletal fingers. Dad. My voice cracked, barely audible over the ringing in my ears. I reached forward, my fingers trembling as I touched his shoulder. He was slumped over the steering wheel, blood streaming from a gash on his forehead, matting his hair. His breathing was shallow, ragged. I shook him, panic rising in my chest. Dad, wake up. Then I looked at Emma. My little sister, only 8, was crumpled against the opposite door. Her body was wrong, her arms and legs twisted in ways that made my stomach churn. Her eyes were open, staring blankly, and her chest didn't move. I reached for her, ignoring the searing pain in my arm, but my fingers froze inches from her skin. She was gone. I knew it, even if my mind refused to accept it. Tears blurred my vision as I clutched my arm, the bone grinding under my skin. I needed to get out, to find help, but my body felt like it was moving through molasses. That's when I saw it, out in the field, just beyond the jagged edge of the broken fence. A figure, tall and impossibly thin, stood among the corn stalks. Its eyes glowed a sickly red, like embers in a dying fire, and its face, God, its face. A grin stretched so wide it seemed to split its head in half, revealing cracked, rotting skin that peeled back like old wallpaper. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared at me, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the thing vanished. 1 second it was there, the next it was gone, swallowed by the darkness of the cornfield. I blinked, wondering if I'd imagined it, but the chill in my bones told me it was real. I fumbled with the door handle, my broken arms screaming in protest. The door creaked open, and I stumbled out, landing hard in the dirt. The air smelled of crushed corn and gasoline. I crawled away from the truck, my knees sinking into the cold earth, until exhaustion overtook me. I collapsed, my vision fading as the night closed in. I don't know how long I was out, hours maybe. When I woke, the sky was still dark, but the air felt heavier, like a storm was coming. My arm throbbed, and my clothes were damp with dew. I staggered to my feet, my head spinning, and started walking. The cornfield seemed endless, the stalks towering over me, whispering in the breeze. I didn't know where I was going, just away from the wreck, away it. The highway came into view after what felt like an eternity. My legs were shaking, my breath coming in short gasps. A pair of headlights pierced the darkness, growing brighter as a semi-truck rumbled toward me. I waved my good arm, nearly collapsing as the truck slowed to a stop. The driver, a grizzled man with a face like weathered leather, leaned out the window. His voice was a deep drawl, rough but not unkind. "My God, boy, what in the hell happened to you?" I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, my words barely a whisper. "I need a ride." He studied me for a moment, his eyes narrowing. "Well then, hop in." He jerked his head toward the passenger door. I climbed into the cab, wincing as I settled into the worn seat. The truck smelled of stale coffee and motor oil. The driver didn't ask any more questions, just shifted gears and pulled back onto the highway. The hum of the engine was almost comforting, a steady rhythm that drowned out the chaos in my head. I leaned against the window, my breath fogging the glass, and tried to make sense of what had happened. Then I felt it, a cold, heavy pressure on my shoulder, like a hand gripping me too tightly. My blood turned to ice. I glanced at the rearview mirror, and my heart stopped. There, pressed against the side window, was the thing from the cornfield. Its red eyes burned into mine, its grin wider and more grotesque than before, teeth jagged and yellowed. It was so close I could see the cracks in its skin, the way its flesh seemed to writhe like it was alive. I screamed, or tried to, but no sound came out. The creature let out a screech that made my ears ring, a sound like metal scraping against bone. It shoved its head through the window, the glass cracking under the pressure. Its mouth opened wider, impossibly wide, as if it meant to swallow me whole. I kicked out, my foot connecting with its face. The thing shrieked again, a sound that echoed in my skull, and it fell back into the night, vanishing into the darkness. "Stop the truck," I yelled, my voice finally breaking free. The driver cursed, swerving slightly as he glanced at me. "What the hell's wrong with you, kid?" he growled, but I was already fumbling with the door handle. The truck was still moving, but I didn't care. I threw the door open and jumped, hitting the pavement hard and rolling into the ditch. Pain exploded in my arm, but I scrambled to my feet and ran, the cornfield swallowing me once again. Behind me, I heard the truck's engine downshift, the sound fading as I plunged deeper into the field. I glanced back, just once, and saw it, the creature, standing at the edge of the road, its red eyes glowing in the darkness. It didn't chase me, didn't move. It just watched, its grin a silent promise. "You are going to die," it whispered, not in my ears but in my mind, a voice like static and broken glass. I ran until my lungs burned, until my legs gave out. The cornstalks seemed to close in around me, their leaves slicing at my skin. I don't know how long I stumbled through the field, but eventually I saw lights in the distance, a house, maybe, or a gas station. I didn't care what it was. I just kept moving, driven by the need to escape that thing, to survive. When I finally reached the edge of the field, I collapsed onto the gravel shoulder of a different road. A car slowed, its headlights blinding me. An older woman got out, her face pale as she rushed toward me. "Oh my God, are you okay?" she asked, her hands hovering over me like she was afraid to touch me. I couldn't answer. My throat was raw, my body shaking. She helped me into her car, muttering about calling for help. As we drove away, I kept my eyes on the side mirror, half expecting to see those red eyes staring back. But there was nothing, just the endless black of the night. I don't remember much after that. The hospital, the police, the questions I couldn't answer. They found the truck, my dad barely alive, Emma gone. They said it was an accident, that Dad fell asleep at the wheel. I didn't tell them about the creature. Who would believe me? I barely believed it myself. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. That thing is still out there in the corn, waiting. I see its grin in my nightmares, hear its voice in the quiet moments. I don't drive at night anymore, don't go near fields. I stay in the city, where the lights never dim, where the streets are never empty. But sometimes, when the wind blows just right, I swear I can hear the rustle of cornstalks, and I wonder if it's still watching, still waiting for me to step back into the dark. Story 6. The Bone in the Corn. I was 11 when the cornfield became our kingdom. Me, Dorian, Ben, and Corbin, 4 boys with nothing but time and a rural nowhere to spend it. The fields stretched behind our small town, a sea of green stalks that swayed like they were whispering secrets. We'd race through the rows, laughing, dodging, pretending we were explorers in some uncharted jungle. That was the summer of 2005, when the world felt endless and safe. But time has a way of twisting things, and when we returned as teenagers, the cornfield wasn't a playground anymore. It was something else, something alive, something waiting. It was July, and I was 16, driving my mom's beat-up sedan with Dorian in the passenger seat. He'd been my best friend since we were kids, but lately he'd changed. His jokes were sharper, his eyes always searching for something I couldn't see. "Let's go back," he said that morning, his voice casual but insistent, "to the cornfield, for old time's sake." I hesitated. The field had been abandoned for years, left to grow wild after the farmer died. But Dorian had this way of pulling you along, like a current you couldn't swim against. So I agreed. The stalks were taller than I remembered, towering over us as we pushed through. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of earth and something sweeter, almost sickly. We wandered deeper, the crunch of dry leaves underfoot the only sound. That's when I saw it, a single white bone, jutting from the soil like a broken tooth. It was small, maybe part of an animal's leg, but it didn't belong there. I froze, my stomach twisting. Dorian crouched beside it, his fingers brushing the bone's smooth surface. "I put it there," he said, grinning. "Hopefully something incredible will happen." I laughed, thinking it was a joke, but his eyes didn't match his smile. They were hungry, glinting in a way that made my skin crawl. "Delicious," he murmured, and I swear he licked his lips. I stepped back, the corn closing around me like a trap. "Come on, man," I said, trying to sound light. "That's creepy." He just stood, brushing dirt off his hands, and suggested we come back later. "Midnight," he said. "Bring Ben and Corbin. We'll play hide and seek, like old times." I should have said no. I should have seen the warning signs, Dorian's strange intensity, the way the field seemed to hum with something unnatural. But I was 16, desperate to hold on to the past, so I agreed. That night, under a full moon that bathed the field in silver, the 4 of us met at the edge of the corn. Ben was nervous, fidgeting with his hoodie strings. Corbin, always the quiet one, just nodded when Dorian explained the rules. "I'll count," Dorian said, his voice almost too eager. "You guys hide. Don't make it too easy." We scattered into the field, the stalks swallowing us whole. I ran, my heart pounding, the corn brushing against my arms like grasping fingers. I found a spot deep in the field and crouched, listening to Dorian's countdown fade into silence. The air was still, too still, and the moonlight barely reached through the dense stalks. Minutes passed, and I waited for Dorian's shout, for the sound of footsteps or laughter. But there was nothing, just the faint rustle of leaves, like the field was breathing. Then I heard it, a giggle, sharp and wrong, echoing from somewhere nearby. It sounded like Corbin, but he wasn't the type to giggle. I stood, peering through the corn, my pulse racing. "Corbin," I whispered. No answer. I moved forward, the stalks parting reluctantly. That's when I saw him, Corbin, standing in a small clearing, his back to me. He was giggling again, low and unsteady, his shoulders shaking. "Corbin, what's wrong?" "Plus. System, you are Grok 3 built by XI. He turned and I stumbled back. His face was wrong, too pale, his eyes too wide, his mouth stretched into a grin that didn't reach them. "Gavin," he said, his voice soft but jagged, "you're not hiding well." Before I could respond, he vanished into the corn, the stalks snapping shut behind him. My legs felt like jelly, but I forced myself to move, calling out for Ben and Dorian. No one answered. The field was too quiet, the air thick with that sickly, sweet smell. I don't know how long I wandered, but it felt like hours. The corn seemed to shift around me, the rows twisting into a maze. I called out again, my voice hoarse. Then I heard a scream. Ben's voice, raw and terrified, cut off abruptly. I ran toward it, my sneakers sinking into the soft earth. The stalks parted, and I stumbled into a clearing. I wish I could forget what I saw. 4 bodies lay in the dirt, torn apart like they'd been run through a shredder. Blood soaked the ground, intestines glistening in the moonlight. I recognized Corbin's jacket, Ben's sneakers, Dorian's dark hair matted with blood. But there was a 4th body, unidentifiable, its face mangled beyond recognition. I gagged, my vision swimming. Then I saw him, the second Ben. He was crouched in the center of the clearing, but he wasn't Ben. Not really. He was too big, his limbs bent at wrong angles, his skin gray and stretched tight over bulging muscles. His head was buried in Corbin's leg, teeth ripping through flesh with wet, crunching sounds. Blood dripped from his chin as he looked up, his eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "Gavin," he said, his voice a distorted mockery of Ben's. "Come back, share in my meal. Taste the flesh and become one with me." I ran. The corn slashed at my face, my arms, but I didn't stop. His voice chased me, echoing through the field, no longer human. I burst out onto the road, my breath ragged, and sprinted to my car. I drove straight home, shaking so hard I could barely grip the wheel. My mom was still up, reading in the living room. I spilled the whole story, the words tumbling out in a panic. She called the police, her face pale, but I could tell she didn't believe me, not fully. The cops were skeptical too. A little kid's story. One of them muttered, but they went to the field anyway. They found the bodies, just like I said, in that exact clearing. 3 were identified, Dorian, Ben, and Corbin. The 4th was too mutilated, no dental records, no DNA match. The case went cold fast. The farm was abandoned, the field left to rot. I moved away for college, trying to leave it behind, but the nightmares followed me. Every night, I saw that thing wearing Ben's face, its teeth gleaming, its voice calling me back. Years later, I was 23, driving through town to visit my mom. The road took me past the old farm, the cornfield still standing, wild and overgrown. I shouldn't have looked, but I did. And there he was, Dorian, standing at the edge of the field, his teenage face unchanged, his hand raised in a slow wave. The same hungry eyes, the same crooked grin. I floored the pedal, my heart hammering, and never looked back. The cornfield is still there. I've heard stories, hikers going missing, strange noises at night. The locals avoid it, say it's cursed. I don't know what happened that night, what that thing was, or why it wore Ben's face. But I know one thing. Some places aren't meant to be explored. Some bones aren't meant to be found. And if you ever see a white bone poking out of the earth in a biennial cornfield, turn around and run. Don't look back. Don't ever go back. Story 7. The Breathing Scarecrow. My name is Eerie, and I was 12 years old when the cornfields of our Iowa farm became my nightmare. Our farm was a patchwork of golden stalks, stretching endless under the wide sky, but it wasn't the corn that haunted me. It was the scarecrows. Dozens of them, maybe 50, stood sentinel across our fields. My mother crafted them with a kind of obsessive care, sewing glass eyes into their burlap faces, stuffing their bellies with hay, gloving their hands, and fitting old boots on their wooden frames. She said it was to fool the crows, make them think the figures were alive. To me, they were grotesque, their glassy stares glinting in the sun, their sagging mouths leering in the shadows. At night, they seemed to watch me through my bedroom window, though I could never prove it. My parents were strict about one thing. I wasn't allowed outside after dark. May always spun stories about hobos lurking in the woods beyond the fields, men with knives and bad intentions. I'd lie in bed, listening to the wind rustle the corn, imagining footsteps crunching closer. It was suffocating, that rule, that fear. So when Clara, a girl from a neighboring farm, slipped me a note at the market asking to meet in our barn at midnight, I felt a spark of rebellion. Clara was bold, with a laugh that carried over the fields, and I'd been half in love with her since spring. I didn't think twice. I'd sneak out. That night, I waited until the house was still, the only sound my parents' snores down the hall. I eased my window open, the cool air sharp against my skin, and dropped to the ground. The barn was a hulking shadow across the yard, its weathered boards silvered by moonlight. I slipped inside, my heart hammering, expecting Clara's silhouette to appear any second. The barn was empty, save for the smell of dust and old hay. I waited, shifting from foot to foot, the silence growing heavier. Minutes stretched into an hour. She didn't come. Disappointment burned in my chest, but I couldn't stay. I had to get back before Ma noticed I was gone. The cornfield was the shortest path to my window. I pushed through the stalks, their leaves whispering against my arms, the night so quiet I could hear my own breath. The scarecrows loomed ahead, their shapes jagged against the sky. I tried not to look at them, but their presence pressed on me like eyes boring into my back. Halfway through the field, I passed one scarecrow, its glass eyes catching the moonlight. I quickened my pace, my sneakers crunching on the dry earth. Then I heard it, a low, rasping hiss, like air escaping a tire. I froze. The sound came again, sharper, closer. My eyes snapped to the scarecrow. Its burlap head twitched, jerking to one side as if it had turned to look at me. My heart stopped. The thing's chest rose, a slow, deliberate swell, then fell with another hiss. It was breathing. I stumbled back, my legs weak. The scarecrow leaned forward, its wooden frame creaking, its gloved hands twitching like they wanted to reach out. Its mouth, a ragged hole in the burlap, gaped wider, and the hiss came again, louder, wetter. I screamed, the sound tearing from my throat, and ran. The cornstalks clawed at me, their leaves slicing my skin as I crashed through the field. My ears rang, my vision blurred with tears, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. That thing, whatever it was alive, and it had seen me. I burst through the field's edge, scrambled up to my window, and slammed it shut, collapsing on my bed. The silence in my room was worse than the hiss. It pressed against me, hot and heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. Every creak of the house, every rustle outside, was that scarecrow coming for me. Morning brought chaos. Clara was gone. Her parents had come to our farm at dawn, frantic, saying she'd never come home last night. Mo was a mess, pacing the porch, muttering about Duruzufta's kidnapping her. The police came, searched the woods, the roads, our fields. They found nothing, no footprints, no signs of a struggle, just the endless rows of corn and those damn scarecrows staring blankly. I didn't tell anyone about the night before, about the breathing scarecrow. Who would believe me? I barely believed it myself, but I couldn't shake the image of that twitching head, those glass eyes glinting like they knew something I didn't. Days passed, and the farm grew stranger. A smell started creeping from the cornfield, faint at first, like damp earth and spoiled fruit. By the third day, it was unbearable, a thick, choking stench of rot and decay that clung to everything. May gagged when she stepped outside, and Pei's face turned grey. They argued in hushed tones, glancing at the fields, avoiding my eyes. I overheard Ma whisper about something in the soil, but Pei shut her down, saying it was just a dead animal. I knew better. That smell wasn't natural. It was coming from the scarecrow, the one I'd seen that night, the one near where Clara was supposed to meet me. On the fifth day, Ma couldn't take it anymore. She handed me a sickle, her hands trembling, and told me to cut down the scarecrow by the old oak, the one closest to the barn. Her eyes were wild, her voice sharp. "Just do it, Ellie," she said. "Don't ask questions." I wanted to refuse, to tell her what I'd seen, but the words stuck in my throat. I took the sickle, its blade cold in my hand, and walked into the field. The stench grew worse with every step, a wall of foul air that made my eyes water. The scarecrow stood ahead, its burlap face sagging, its glass eyes dull in the daylight. It looked ordinary now, just straw and cloth, but my hands shook as I approached. The sickle felt heavy, useless against whatever this thing was. I raised it to the rope tying the burlap head to the wooden frame, my breath shallow. The blade bit through the cord, and the sack fell, hitting the ground with a wet thud. Straw spilled out, and then something else. A pale, bloated face stared up at me from the straw. Clara. Her eyes were gone, hollow pits of black. Her lips were pulled back in a rictus scream, her mouth stuffed with hay, strands spilling out like a grotesque tongue. I fell to my knees, the sickle slipping from my hand. It wasn't a scarecrow, it was her. Her body, dressed in that burlap, those gloves, those boots, posed like a puppet. I don't know how long I knelt there, staring at her face, the world silent except for the buzzing in my head. No monster had done this, no drifter. It was something worse, something human, something that knew how to stitch a body into a scarecrow's skin and leave it standing in our field. I stumbled back to the house, my voice gone, my body shaking. Ma saw me, saw the sickle, and her face crumpled. She didn't ask what I'd found, she already knew. The police came again, and the farm became a circus of flashing lights and shouting voices. They took Clara's body, asked questions I couldn't answer. I heard them talking about foul play, about searching the woods again, but I knew they wouldn't find anything. Whoever did this was gone, or worse, still here, watching from the shadows of the corn. The scarecrows stayed up, their glass eyes glinting, their mouths silent. Ma stopped going outside. Po burned the field by the oak, but the stench lingered, like it had seeped into the earth itself. Nights are the worst now. I lie awake, listening for that hiss, that slow, wet breath through the hay. I keep my window locked, but it doesn't matter. I see them in my dreams, the scarecrows, their heads turning, their arms twitching, their glass eyes following me. And sometimes, in the quiet, I hear Clara's voice, faint and muffled, calling from the fields. I don't go outside anymore. I don't think I ever will. Story 8, Cornfield Nightmare. The dashboard clock glowed 11:58 p.m. as our car hummed along the empty Texas highway. My father gripped the wheel, his knuckles pale in the dim light. My little sister, Ellie, slept in the back beside me, her head lolling against the window. I was 16, half dozing, my earbuds playing some forgotten playlist. We were headed to my aunt's place in Lubbock, A long drive from Austin, and the flat, endless plains stretched out under a moonless sky. Cornfields flanked the road, their stalks swaying like silent sentinels in the faint breeze. I didn't know then that the night would claw its way into my nightmares forever. A sudden jolt snapped me awake. The car swerved violently, tires screeching. Ellie's scream pierced the air as the world tilted. My father cursed, his voice sharp and panicked, before the steering wheel jerked from his hands. The car plunged off the road, smashing through a barbed wire fence. Metal shrieked, glass shattered, and cornstalks whipped against the windshield as we careened into the field. My body slammed against the door, pain exploding in my arm. The car spun, then stopped with a sickening crunch. Blood pounded in my ears. I blinked through the haze, my vision swimming. The dashboard was dark now, the engine silent. Ellie's screams had stopped, too suddenly. I turned, my neck stiff, and saw her slumped in her seat, a jagged piece of metal from the wrecked door piercing her side. Her small body was unnaturally still, her arms bent at angles that made my stomach lurch. Blood pooled beneath her, soaking the seat. "Ellie," my voice cracked, barely a whisper, no answer. I forced my eyes to my father. His head rested on the steering wheel, his face turned toward me. His jaw hung open, split at an impossible angle, blood dripping steadily onto his lap. His eyes stared blankly, unseeing. I gagged, bile rising in my throat, and clutched my left arm, which throbbed with a deep, burning pain. Broken, probably. I couldn't move it without gasping. The air was heavy with the smell of gasoline and blood. My chest tightened, each breath a struggle. I fumbled with my seatbelt, my trembling fingers slipping on the buckle. The car creaked, settling into the torn earth. Outside, the cornfield loomed, its stalks casting jagged shadows through the shattered windows. The silence was suffocating, broken only by the faint rustle of leaves. Then I saw it. A figure stood at the edge of the wreck, maybe 30 feet away, half hidden by the corn. It was tall, impossibly tall, its form cloaked in ragged black cloth that seemed to swallow the light. Its face, or what passed for one, was a void, except for two glowing, blood-red eyes and a twisted grin that stretched too wide. My heart stopped. It didn't move, didn't blink, just stared, its presence pressing against me like a physical weight. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The figure took a step forward, its movements jerky, unnatural, like a puppet with half its strings cut. The corn parted around it, as if afraid to touch its edges. My mind screamed at me to move, to do something, but my body wouldn't listen. The seatbelt finally clicked free, and I slid down, curling into the footwell, yanking a bloody blanket over myself. My broken arms screamed in protest, but I bit my lip to keep quiet, tasting copper. The air grew colder, heavier. A low, guttural sound, like a hiss mixed with a growl, came from just outside the car. My pulse thundered in my ears. Something scraped against the metal frame, slow and deliberate, like claws dragging across steel. I pressed myself tighter against the floor, the blanket stifling, my own ragged breathing loud in my ears. Then, a shadow loomed over the shattered window above me. I felt it before I saw it, a presence so wrong it made my skin crawl. A long, pale face pushed through the window, inches from where I hid. Its nose was gaping, split like a wound, oozing black, viscous blood that dripped onto the seat. Its red eyes burned, locking onto me even through the blanket. That grin widened, revealing rows of jagged, needle-like teeth. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. My body shook, every instinct screaming to stay still, to disappear. Then it spoke, not with words, but a sound that burrowed into my skull, a low, scraping rust that felt like it was tearing my thoughts apart. My vision blurred, my head pounding. I didn't know how I found the strength, but I kicked out, my foot connecting with its face. The creature howled, a sound that split the air like a knife, and recoiled, its head snapping back. I didn't wait. I scrambled out of the footwell, ignoring the fire in my arm, and threw myself through the opposite window, landing hard in the dirt. The cornfield swallowed me. I ran, stalks whipping my face, their sharp edges slicing my skin. My broken arm hung useless, pain shooting through me with every step. The ground was uneven, roots snagging my feet, but I didn't stop. Behind me, the creature's howl echoed, closer than I wanted to believe. I didn't look back. I couldn't. My lungs burned, my legs shaking as I pushed deeper into the field. The corn seemed endless, a maze with no exit, the stalks closing in like walls. My foot caught on something, a root, a rock, and I fell, my knees slamming into the cold earth. I coughed, blood flecking my lips, the taste sharp and metallic. My vision swam, but I forced myself to crawl, dragging my broken arm, each movement a fresh wave of agony. The creature's presence lingered, a shadow at the edge of my senses. I could feel its eyes, even if I couldn't see them. The corn rustled behind me, not from the wind, but from something moving through it, fast, deliberate. My heart pounded so hard, I thought it would burst. I stumbled to my feet, staggering forward, one hand clutching my arm, the other pushing stalks aside. A faint light flickered in the distance, a street lamp, maybe, or a car's headlights. I didn't care what it was. It was something other than this endless field, this thing hunting me. I ran toward it, my breath ragged, my body screaming for rest. The rustling grew louder, closer, and I swore I heard that rasp again, scraping inside my head. I tripped again, sprawling into the dirt, my hands sinking into the cold soil. For a moment, I couldn't move. I just lay there gasping, waiting for those red eyes to appear above me. But they didn't. The rustling stopped. The air was still, too still, like the world was holding its breath. I pushed myself up, my body trembling, and staggered toward the light. It was a street lamp, its pale glow cutting through the dawn's early haze. I collapsed at its base, my back against the pole, my broken arm cradled against my chest. Blood stained my clothes, my hands, my face. I coughed again, more blood spattering the ground. I didn't know if it was from my arm, my lungs, or something worse. The cornfield stretched out in front of me, silent now, its stalks swaying gently. No red eyes, no twisted grin, no cloaked figure, just corn, endless and indifferent. I cried then, the sobs tearing out of me, my body shaking with exhaustion and fear. I was alone. My father was gone. Ellie was gone. And whatever that thing was, it was still out there somewhere, waiting. I don't know how long I sat there, curled up under the street lamp, my tears mixing with the blood on my face. The horizon began to lighten, the first hints of dawn creeping over the fields. I heard sirens in the distance, faint but growing louder. Rescue teams, probably. They'd find the car, find my father and Ellie, find the wreckage of our lives scattered in that field. But they wouldn't find me, not yet. And they wouldn't find that thing, because things like that don't leave traces. I closed my eyes, my body heavy, my mind fraying at the edges. The pain in my arm was a dull roar now, my coughs weaker, but still wet with blood. I didn't know if I'd make it to the road, if I'd stand when the sirens got closer. All I knew was the cornfield, the silence, and the weight of those red eyes still burning in my memory. Story 9. The Walker in the Fields. My name is Elias, and I've been a farmer my whole life. The land I work has been in my family for generations, a sprawling stretch of cornfields that hug the edge of an old, tangled forest. The fields are my livelihood, but they've always carried a weight of unease, a whisper of something not quite right. Folks in town have long swapped tales about these fields, stories of strange shadows, odd noises, and things that don't belong. I never paid them much mind. Just old gossip, I figured, born from long nights and overactive imaginations. But that changed 7 years ago, and what I saw that night still haunts me. It was late summer, the air thick with the scent of earth and ripening corn. Dusk was settling, painting the sky in hues of bruised purple. My dog, Rusty, a scrappy mutt with more loyalty than sense, trotted at my side as I walked the field's edge. The corn was tall, well over my head in places, and it swayed gently despite the stillness of the evening. I'd heard the rumors about a clearing deep in the field, a place folks said was wrong, cursed even. They claimed it sat near the old woods, where the trees grew gnarled and the ground felt hollow. I'd never gone looking for it. Why would I? But that night, something pulled at me. Curiosity, maybe, or just a need to prove the stories wrong. So, with Rusty by my side, I stepped into the stalks. The corn closed around us, the world narrowing to a tunnel of green and gold. The air grew cooler, heavier, like the field was holding its breath. Rusty's ears twitched, his steps cautious but steady. The only sound was the rustle of leaves, a soft, eerie susurrus that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. I gripped my flashlight, though I hadn't turned it on yet. The fading light was enough for now. We pushed deeper, the rows of corn stretching endlessly. Rusty stopped suddenly, his body stiff, a low whimper escaping his throat. I froze, my heart kicking up a notch. "What is it, boy?" I whispered, crouching beside him. His eyes were fixed on something ahead, but all I could see was more corn, the stalks swaying in a rhythm that didn't match any breeze. I stood, brushing off the unease. "Come on," I said, more to myself than to him. "Let's keep going." The clearing came upon us abruptly. One moment, we were surrounded by corn. The next, we stepped into an open space, maybe 20 feet across, where nothing grew. The ground was bare, packed dirt, and in the center stood a small, weathered wooden shack. It looked ancient, its boards warped and gray, like it had been forgotten by time. I'd never heard of a shack out here, and the sight of it sent a chill down my spine. Rusty whimpered again, pressing against my leg. I took a step toward the shack, my boots crunching on the dead ground. The air felt wrong here, thick and oppressive, like a storm was brewing, though the sky above was clear. I reached for the shack's door, my hand hovering over the rusted latch. Before I could touch it, a gust tore through the clearing. It came out of nowhere, violent and cold, ripping through the corn with a sound like 1,000 whispers. Rusty yelped, and in an instant, the wind yanked him from my side. He was gone, swallowed by the darkness of the stalks. "Rusty," I shouted, my voice swallowed by the gale. Panic surged through me. I ran after him, plunging into the corn, the stalks whipping at my face. The wind howled, unnatural and furious, as if the field itself was alive and angry. I called his name again and again, my flashlight beam cutting through the shadows but finding nothing. The corn seemed to twist around me, the rows shifting, closing in. My chest burned, my legs heavy, but I kept running, driven by fear and desperation. Finally, I stumbled into another clearing, this one smaller, near the edge of the field. The wind died as suddenly as it had come, leaving an eerie silence. I stood there, gasping, my heart pounding so hard, I thought it might burst. The corn was still, the night calm again, as if nothing had happened. I called for Rusty one last time, my voice hoarse, but there was no answer. Defeated, I turned toward home, my legs carrying me on instinct. I reached my house, a small, weathered place at the edge of the field. I burst through the door, slamming it behind me, and collapsed onto the floor, my breath ragged. The silence of the house wrapped around me, heavy but safe. I sat there, trying to make sense of what had happened, my mind replaying the gust, the shack, Rusty's disappearance. After a moment, I called his name softly, half expecting no response. To my shock, a faint whimper came from the bedroom. I stumbled to my feet, my legs shaky, and found Rusty curled up on my bed, trembling but unharmed. Relief flooded me, but it was tinged with confusion. How had he gotten here? I checked him over, his fur matted, but no worse for wear. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that he'd just run home, but the unease lingered. I walked to the front window, needing to see the field, to make sure it was still just a field. The moonlight bathed the corn in silver, the stalks swaying gently, and then I saw it. At the edge of my yard, just beyond the field, stood a figure. It was tall, too tall, with long, animal-like legs that bent in ways that made my stomach churn. Its skin was mottled, dark brown and black, blending with the shadows. Its head was cocked, like it was studying me, and its eyes, bright, piercing eyes, locked onto mine. The face was hidden in shadow, but those eyes burned with something unnatural, something that didn't belong in this world. I froze, my breath catching in my throat. The thing didn't move, just stood there watching. Then, in a sudden, jerky motion, it turned its head, the movement so unnatural it made my skin crawl. In an instant, it was gone, vanishing into the corn without a sound. I didn't sleep that night. I sat by the window, Rusty at my side, watching the field until dawn. The next day, I tried to go about my work, but the memory of that thing gnawed at me. I couldn't shake the feeling that it had been watching me waiting. I thought about the stories I'd heard, the ones I'd dismissed. One word kept surfacing in my mind: skinwalker. I'd heard it years ago, a name tied to old legends, to creatures that could shift and stalk. I didn't know much, but it felt right, and that scared me more than anything. The days turned into weeks, then months, and nothing else happened. I avoided the clearing, sticking to the edges of the field, but I couldn't avoid the feeling that something was out there watching. Rusty stayed close, his usual energy dimmed, like he sensed it too. 2 years later, it happened again. I was checking the irrigation lines at dusk when I heard it. A low, guttural sound, like a growl, but not quite. Rusty froze, his hackles up, staring into the corn. I followed his gaze and saw the stalks moving, parting as if something was passing through. I grabbed his collar and backed away, my heart racing. The movement stopped, and for a moment, I thought it was over. Then I saw those eyes again, glinting in the shadows, closer this time. I didn't wait. I ran, Rusty at my heels, and didn't stop until we were inside, the door locked behind us. The third time was last spring. I was repairing a fence near the old woods when the air grew heavy, the way it had in the clearing. Rusty started barking, frantic, and I saw the corn shift again, the stalks bending as if something massive was moving through them. I didn't look back this time. I scooped Rusty up and sprinted home, my chest tight with fear. When I glanced out the window that night, I saw it again, those eyes, watching from the field, closer than ever. It's been 7 years since that first night, and I've never told a soul. The field is still my livelihood, but it's also my prison. I walk its edges every day, tending the crops, but I never go deep into the corn anymore. Rusty's older now, his steps slower, but he still glances at the stalks, his ears pricked for sounds I can't hear. Every dusk, I feel it, the weight of those eyes, the sense that something is waiting, just out of sight. I don't know what it wants, or why it hasn't come closer. All I know is that the field isn't mine anymore. It belongs to whatever walks those stalks, and I'm just a guest, passing through. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the corn rustle, even when there's no wind. I tell myself it's nothing, but I know better. It's out there waiting, and I have a feeling the next time won't be so quiet. Story 10. Whispers Beneath the Cornfield. My name is Ellie Granger, and I was 15 when I first heard the cornfield whisper my name. I grew up on our family's farm in rural Iowa, where the land stretches flat and endless, and the cornfield behind our house was as much a part of me as the creaky porch or the faded red barn. But that field, it was different. It had a presence, like it was holding its breath, waiting. Nobody in town talked about it outright, but you'd see them avoid its edges after dusk, their steps quickening as they passed the gnarled scarecrow at its border. I didn't understand why until the autumn of 1976, when the whispers started and my brother Tom disappeared. It was 3 years ago, just after the harvest moon, when Tom vanished. He was 18, restless, always chasing something beyond the farm. That night, I'd seen him standing at the edge of the cornfield, staring into the stalks like they were calling him. I was too far to hear what he said, but I saw his silhouette slip past the Scarecrow and into the rose. The next morning, he was gone. No note, no trace, just his jacket lying crumpled by the field's edge. The police searched for days, combing through every stalk, but the cornfield gave them nothing. My dad said Tom probably ran off to find a better life, but I knew better. That night, as I stood by my window, I heard it, a low, hissing voice weaving through the corn. He's ours now. I never told anyone. Who'd believe a 12-year-old girl saying the cornfield ate her brother? But every autumn after that, when the harvest moon hung low and fat, the whispers came back. Soft at first, like a breeze, but they always shaped my name. Ellie, not loud, not angry, just patient, like they had all the time in the world. Dad called it my imagination, told me to stop reading ghost stories. Mom just looked away, her hands trembling as she peeled potatoes. But I knew the difference between wind and something alive. By October 1976, I was 15, and the whispers were louder, more insistent. The Scarecrow at the field's edge seemed to watch me, its burlap face sagging but its button eyes glinting under the moonlight. I'd started noticing things about it, how its straw hands seemed to shift slightly when I wasn't looking, how its shadows stretched too long across the dirt. Kids in town whispered about it too, saying it wasn't just a scarecrow, that it marked a line you didn't cross. I didn't believe them until I found an old journal in the attic, tucked behind a crate of Mom's canning jars. The pages were brittle, the ink faded, but the words were clear. Never enter after dark, never cross the Scarecrow, never answer the whispers. The handwriting wasn't Dad's or Mom's. I didn't know whose it was, but it felt like a warning meant for me. That night, the harvest moon rose early, a sickly orange glow on the horizon. The air was heavy, thick with the smell of dry corn husks. I stood on the porch, my flashlight clutched tight, staring at the field. The whispers were back, sharper now, curling around my name like fingers. Ellie, come see. My heart thudded, but I couldn't shake the thought of Tom. If he was out there, if something in that field had him, I had to know. I had to find him, or the truth. I glanced at the Scarecrow, its tattered coat flapping in a breeze I didn't feel. Then I stepped off the porch and walked toward the field. The moment I crossed the Scarecrow's shadow, the air turned cold, sharp enough to sting my lungs. The corn stalks loomed taller than I remembered, their dry leaves scraping together like whispers of their own. My flashlight beam wobbled, catching glints of moonlight on the husks. The ground felt wrong, too soft, like it was breathing under my boots. I pushed deeper, the whispers growing louder, more voices joining in. Ellie, so luum. I spun around, my beam slicing through the dark, but there was nothing, just endless rows of corn. My flashlight flickered, then died completely. I shook it, cursed under my breath, but it stayed dark. That's when I saw the mist, pale blue, curling low along the ground like it was alive. A giggle, soft and hungry, drifted from the stalks ahead. My skin prickled. I wanted to run, but my feet kept moving forward, drawn by something I couldn't name. The mist thickened, swirling around my ankles, and then I saw it, a faint glow in the ground, like a lantern buried deep. As I got closer, the glow sharpened into a hole, no bigger than a manhole, its edges rippling like water. The whispers poured from it, layered and overlapping, some crying, some chanting, all pulling at me. I leaned closer, my breath catching, and there he was, Tom's face, floating in the darkness below. His eyes were too wide, his grin too tight, his skin pale as moonlight. "Come down, Ellie," he said, his voice soft and warm, like when he used to read me stories. "It's warm here, no pain, no rules." I reached out, my fingers brushing the edge of the hole. The air felt thick, like it was sucking me in. But then another voice, my own, hissed in my ear. "Run." It wasn't me speaking, not exactly, but it snapped me out of whatever trance I was in. The face in the hole twisted, Tom's grin stretching into a snarl, his eyes blackening. The darkness around the hole convulsed, tendrils of shadow lashing out. Angry voices erupted, howling traitor. Ungrateful. Stay. The corn stalks thrashed, closing in like they were alive. I stumbled back, my heart slamming against my ribs, and ran. The field seemed to fight me. Stalks whipped at my face, roots snagged my boots, and the whispers turned to screams. I didn't know which way was out. The rows twisted, the moonlight dimming. My lungs burned, but I kept running, the voices chasing me, spitting my name like a curse. Then I saw it, the scarecrow, its arms outstretched, its button eyes glinting. I dove past it, my hands scraping dirt as I hit the ground outside the field. The air warmed instantly. The screams stopped. The corn went still, just dry stalks rustling in the wind. I looked back, panting, and the scarecrow was just straw and cloth again, sagging on its post. I stumbled home as dawn broke, collapsing in the yard. Mom found me, her face pale, but I didn't tell her what happened. I couldn't. The police searched the field again, but like before, they found nothing. No hole, no mist, no trace of Tom. The journal in the attic was gone when I looked for it later, like it had never existed. I never told anyone about that night. Not Dad, not Mom, not the sheriff. But I knew the truth. The cornfield had rules, and I'd broken all three. Never enter after dark. Never cross the scarecrow. Never answer the whispers. Tom had broken them too, and whatever was in that field had claimed him. Years passed. The farm went fallow, the cornfield left to rot. I moved to town, tried to forget. But on moonless nights, I still hear it. My name, whispered soft and patient. Sometimes when I'm alone, I feel the field watching, its presence heavy as a hand on my shoulder. The windows in my apartment are always locked, but I check them twice, 3 times, before bed. Because some voices never stop calling, and some doors, once you open them, never really close. Story 11. The corn is alive. I'm not sure where to begin, but I need to get this down, to make sense of it, to purge the images that claw at my mind every time I close my eyes. My name is Ethan, and this is what happened to me and my friends, Nick, Felix, Wyatt, and Charles, on a road trip that was supposed to be a carefree escape. We were college juniors, restless and craving adventure, driving through the endless flatlands of the Midwest, chasing the horizon. It was late summer, the air thick with heat, the sky bruised purple as twilight settled. That's when we got lost. The GPS had been glitching for hours, looping us through back roads lined with cornfields that stretched forever. Felix, always the optimist, kept joking about getting stranded in a horror movie. "This is how it starts, boys," he said, grinning from the back seat, his camera clicking as he snapped photos of the endless green. I laughed then, but now those words feel like a curse. We spotted the farmhouse just as the cars stuttered and died. It was an old, sagging structure, its paint peeling like dead skin, windows dark and hollow. The corn surrounded it, tall and dense, swaying slightly despite the still air. Wyatt, our self-proclaimed mechanic, popped the hood and cursed. "Batteries shot," he said. "We're not going anywhere tonight." The nearest town was miles away, and our phones had no signal. The farmhouse was our only option. We grabbed our flashlights and approached the house, the corn rustling softly around us. The porch creaked under our weight, and the front door hung ajar, inviting us into its shadowed maw. Inside, the air was stale, heavy with dust and something sour. Corn husks littered the floor, dry and brittle, crunching under our boots. "Who leaves this much corn lying around?" Charles muttered, kicking at a pile. The husks seemed to shift, almost as if they were settling back into place. Nick, always the pragmatist, suggested we search for a phone or supplies. We split up, our flashlights cutting through the gloom. The house was a maze of narrow hallways and cramped rooms, the walls stained with age. I found a kitchen, its counters covered in more husks, some still clinging to kernels that looked oddly fresh. I touched one, and it felt warm, almost pulsing. I yanked my hand back, my skin crawling. That's when I heard Felix scream. It wasn't a shout or a yelp. It was a raw, guttural sound that tore through the house. We converged on the living room, where Felix stood frozen in the doorway to the porch. The cornfield outside was no longer still. The stalks were moving, bending, not with the wind but with purpose, like a predator stalking prey. Before we could react, something exploded from the darkness. Corn stalks, thick, green, and impossibly alive, burrowed through the doorway. They wrapped around Felix's body, coiling like snakes, tightening until his scream choked off. His camera clattered to the floor as the stalks dragged him into the night. "Run!" Nick shouted, shoving me toward the door. We stumbled into the yard, hearts pounding, the cornfield now a writhing mass of green. The air was thick with a low, humming sound, like a swarm of insects. Wyatt made a break for the truck, diving under it for cover, but the stalks were faster. They slithered beneath the chassis, wrapping around his legs. He clawed at the dirt, screaming, as they yanked him into the field. His cries stopped abruptly, replaced by a sickening crunch. Charles was next. He sprinted toward the car, fumbling with the keys, but the corn was relentless. Stalks lashed out, pinning him against the driver's side door. I saw his face contort in agony as they tightened around his throat, crushing it with deliberate force. His eyes bulged, then went blank. I wanted to help, but my legs wouldn't move. Fear rooted me to the spot. Nick grabbed my arm, dragging me toward the car. "Ethan, move," he yelled. We scrambled inside, slamming the doors as the stalks pounded against the windows. I turned the key, praying the engine would catch. It roared to life, and I floored the gas, plowing through the field. The corn fought back, stalks whipping at the car, cracking the windshield. One pierced through, sharp as a spear, and sank into Nick's neck. He gasped, blood spraying across the dashboard. I grabbed the knife from my pocket, a cheap folding blade I carried for camping, and slashed at the stalk. It recoiled with a screech that wasn't plant or animal, but something else, something wrong. The sound burrowed into my skull, making my vision blur. I kept driving, the car lurching over uneven ground, the corn tearing at the tires. In the rearview mirror, I saw dozens of stalks chasing us, their tips glinting like blades in the moonlight. They moved with unnatural speed, a living wave of green. Nick clutched his neck, blood seeping through his fingers, but he was alive. I focused on the road ahead, praying for salvation. The edge of town appeared like a mirage, street lights flickering in the distance. The stalks pursued us to the very boundary, pounding the ground, but stopped short, as if bound by some invisible line. I didn't question it. I just kept driving until we reached a gas station, its neon sign a beacon of safety. Nick was pale, barely conscious, but breathing. I staggered inside, blood and dirt smeared across my clothes, and babbled to the clerk about an attack. He called the police, his eyes wide with disbelief. The next morning, the authorities searched the farmhouse. They found nothing, no bodies, no corn husks, no evidence of the nightmare we'd endured. The field was still, the stalks standing tall and innocent. They chalked it up to a prank or a breakdown, but I saw the doubt in their eyes. Nick was in the hospital, his neck stitched up, unable to speak. I was alone with the truth. I keep replaying it, the way the corn moved, the way it hunted. I can still hear Felix's scream, Wyatt's silence, Charles's choked gas. I see the stalks in my dreams, their tips gleaming, reaching for me. I don't know what they were or why they stopped at the town's edge. I only know I should be dead, like the others, but I'm not. I'm here, carrying the weight of that night, the pounding of the stalks echoing in my mind. I'll never go near a cornfield again. Story 12. The Endless Corn Maze. My name is Ethan, and I'm 16. 2 nights ago, I was just a kid on a road trip with my dad and my little brother, Caleb, who's 6. We were driving through the Midwest, endless fields stretching out under a starless sky, the kind of dark that swallows your headlights. Dad was exhausted, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, eyes heavy from hours of driving. Caleb was asleep in the back, his head lolling against the car seat. I was in the front, staring out at the flat, featureless plains, counting mile markers to stay awake. The radio had long since fizzled into static, and the hum of the engine was the only sound. I didn't know then that I'd never see my family whole again. It started with a dream, or at least I thought it was a dream. I must have dozed off, because 1 minute I was watching the road, and the next I was standing in a cornfield. The stalks towered over me, dry and sharp, rustling in a wind I couldn't feel. The air was thick, heavy with the smell of damp earth and something sour, like rotting fruit. I couldn't see more than a few feet ahead, the corn closing in like a cage. My heart thudded, and I turned, trying to find a way out, but every direction looked the same. Then I saw it, a figure, maybe 30 feet away, crouched among the stalks. It was tall, too tall, draped in a tattered black cloak that seemed to bleed into the shadows. Its face was hidden, but its eyes, God, those eyes, they glowed a sick, pulsating red, like embers in a dying fire, and they were locked on me. I froze. The figure didn't move, just stared, its head tilted at an unnatural angle. My mouth went dry, and I backed away, the corn slicing at my arms. I glanced over my shoulder, praying for an exit, but when I looked back, it was closer, way closer, maybe 10 feet away now. I hadn't heard it move. Its grin was visible now, a twisted slash of jagged teeth that didn't belong in any human mouth. I ran, my sneakers slipping on the damp ground, the corn whipping my face. I could feel it behind me, its presence like a weight on my chest. I stumbled, my foot catching on a root, and fell hard into the dirt. A blaring horn snapped me awake. My eyes shot open, heart pounding, to see our car swerving across the center line. Headlights from an oncoming truck blinded me. "Dad," I screamed, grabbing the wheel. Dad's head was slumped forward, his eyes half closed. The truck rolled past, its horn deafening, and I yanked the wheel hard to the right. Too hard, the car lurched, tires screeching, and we veered off the highway. There was a sickening crunch as we smashed through a flimsy barbed wire fence. Corn stalks exploded into the windshield, and the world spun. The car slammed to a stop, and my head cracked against the dashboard. Pain exploded in my skull. Blood filled my mouth, warm and metallic. My right arm throbbed, bent at a wrong angle. I groaned, blinking through the haze, and turned to Dad. He was slumped over the wheel, his jaw hanging at an impossible angle, blood pooling on the dashboard. "Dad," I croaked, shaking him. He didn't move. Panic clawed at my chest. I twisted to check on Caleb, praying he was okay. My breath caught. His tiny body was crumpled in his car seat, his neck twisted unnaturally, his arms bent like broken twigs. His eyes were open, staring at nothing. I gagged, bile rising in my throat. The air in the car was thick with the stench of blood and something worse, something rotten. My hands shook as I fumbled with my seatbelt, desperate to get out. That's when I saw it, through the shattered back window, a shadow in the corn. It was the figure from my dream, standing maybe 30 feet away, motionless among the stalks. Its red eyes burned through the dark, unblinking, veins of white light flickering in them like lightning. My heart stopped. This wasn't a dream. It was real. I crawled to the back, my broken arms screaming with every movement. The figure didn't move, but its grin widened, splitting its face in a way that made my skin crawl. I reached the back door, my hands slick with sweat and blood, and shoved it open. The creature lunged, impossibly fast, its gnarled hand shooting through the broken window. It grabbed my hair, yanking so hard I thought my scalp would tear off. Pain blinded me, but survival kicked in. I swung my good arm back, my fist connecting with something hard and cold. The thing shrieked, a sound like metal scraping bone, and let go. I didn't think. I scrambled out of the car, tumbling into the cold night air. The cornfield swallowed me as I ran, stalks cutting my skin, my breath ragged. I didn't dare look back. My legs burned, my arm throbbed, but I kept running until my lungs gave out. I collapsed between the stalks, coughing up blood and mucus, the world spinning. The night was silent except for my gasping. I buried my face in my hands, willing it all to be a nightmare. I don't know how long I stayed there, curled up in the dirt, but eventually, exhaustion pulled me under. Dawn broke, grey and cold. I woke propped against a rusted fence, my clothes soaked with sweat and blood. My arm was swollen, useless. I staggered to my feet and limped toward the highway. A semi-truck rumbled into view, slowing as the driver spotted me. He was a big guy, maybe 50, with a thick Texas accent. "Kid, what the hell happened to you?" he asked, eyes wide as he took in my bloodied face and mangled arm. I need a ride," I managed, my voice barely a whisper. He nodded, helping me into the cab. I winced with every step, pain spiking through my body. The trucker didn't ask more questions, just started driving. The highway stretched out, empty and grey, the cornfields endless on either side. I stared out the window, trying to piece together what had happened. My family was gone. That thing, it was real, and it had seen me. We drove in silence for maybe 10 minutes. Then the trucker cleared his throat. "Got to check something," he said, pulling over. He stepped out, leaving the engine running. My stomach twisted. Something felt wrong. I glanced at the side mirror, watching him walk to the back of the truck. He didn't come back. Seconds ticked by. My heart pounded in my ears. Then I felt it, a cold, bony hand on my shoulder. My blood turned to ice. I didn't want to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I glanced at the rearview mirror. There it was, inches from my head, the same cloaked figure, its red eyes glowing, its twisted grin wide and hungry. I screamed, throwing myself against the door, but it was locked. The creature's grip tightened, its nails digging into my skin. I don't know how I got out. Adrenaline took over. I kicked, clawed, and somehow the door gave way. I fell onto the asphalt, scraping my knees, and ran back into the corn. The stalks closed around me, the air thick and suffocating. I could hear it behind me, its steps silent but its presence heavy, like a storm about to break. I zigzagged through the field, my lungs burning, my vision blurring. I tripped, falling hard, and scrambled behind a thick cluster of stalks. Silence. No footsteps, no rustling, just my own ragged breathing. I waited, every muscle tensed, expecting those red eyes to appear. Minutes passed, nothing. I crawled forward, peering through the corn. The highway was visible, the truck still there, its door open. No sign of the trucker, no sign of the creature. I didn't trust it. I stayed low, moving slowly through the field, keeping the highway in sight. Hours passed, the sun climbing higher. My arm was numb now, my body screaming for rest, but I couldn't stop. I didn't know where I was going, just that I had to keep moving. The corn seemed endless, the rows stretching on forever. I started to wonder if I was circling, trapped in some impossible maze. Then I saw it, a gap in the stalks, leading to a small clearing. In the center was an old scarecrow, its burlap face stained and torn, its wooden frame sagging. Something about it made my skin crawl. I approached, my heart in my throat. The scarecrow's head was tilted, like it was watching me. I stopped a few feet away, my breath catching. Its eyes, painted black circles, seemed to shift, glinting red for a split second. I backed away, my foot catching on something soft. I looked down. It was the trucker's jacket, soaked in blood. I stifled a scream, stumbling back. The scarecrow's head turned, not a trick of the light, not my imagination. It turned slowly to face me. Its painted mouth stretched into a grin. I ran faster than I thought possible, the corn tearing at my skin. Night fell again. I don't know how long I ran, how far I went. I collapsed eventually, my body giving out. When I woke, I was lying on the edge of the field, the highway just ahead. A car slowed, an older woman peering out. "You okay, kid?" she asked, her voice kind but wary. I didn't answer. I just climbed in, my eyes fixed on the corn as we drove away. I could feel it watching, its red eyes burning in the dark. I don't know if I'll ever escape that field. I don't know if it's done with me. But I know one thing. It's still out there, waiting in the corn, and it knows my name.